Part 71. Fortunate Young Gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 702. Tang Ning returned to his tent with a body full of wounds, lying on the soft bed, not wanting to move. In the past, when she was sparring with Tang Yaoyao, Tang Ning was pinned down by her before she could use all her strength, but she was not tired at all. But Wan Yanyan was different. Now she and Tang Ning were really evenly matched. When the two of them were fighting, she had the upper hand for a while, and Tang Ning recovered from the disadvantage for a while. She was on top for a while, and Tang Ning was on top for a while. After such a struggle, Tang Ning was exhausted in just a quarter of an hour. Of course, Wan Yanyan was not much better than him. Tang Ning walked back by herself, while she was carried back by Ai. A fight between equals was the most dangerous. Fortunately, she and Tang Ning did not have a life and death feud, and they fought for 300 rounds without using weapons, otherwise someone would have died. Old Zheng came in with a roasted leg of lamb. Tang Ning turned her head with great effort, glanced at him, and said, "Isn't her talent very ordinary? Why has she improved so quickly in the past 2 years?" Old Zheng glanced at him and said, "Talent is important, but with your efforts, you are far from competing with talent. She works harder than you, so she improves faster than you. What's so strange about that?" Tang Ning pondered this Zheng-style chicken soup carefully and found it quite reasonable. Unless someone like Xiao Xiao is a gift from heaven in martial arts training, and can surpass most people's hard work with just a little practice, most people's talents are not much different. What separates people is the degree of hard work. Tang Ning has been running around for the past 2 years, and has limited time to practice. If Wan Yanyan works hard, it won't be difficult for her to catch up. Xiaoju, this bastard, didn't know what he said to Wan Yanyan. He wanted to trick him before leaving. If she picked a fight with him every day, Tang Ning's body might not be able to hold on. Lao Zheng took a bite of the lamb leg and said, "Besides, in addition to her own efforts, she must have a master behind her to guide her. It's not surprising that she has improved so quickly. No matter what master Wan Yanyan has behind her, no matter how fast her martial arts progress, these are not important." Tang Ning never forgot that he came to the grassland not to fight with Wan Yanyan, but to find Lanlin, to promote peace between Chen State and the grassland. He got up from the bed and walked into Wan Yanyan's tent. In Wan Yanyan's tent, Ana looked at her and said, "Didn't you say when you were little that you wanted to marry the most powerful warrior on the grassland? Are you in love with that Han Chinese?" "I don't know." Wan Yanyan shook her head and said, "My mother said that for us women, the most powerful warrior is not the one with the best riding skills or the best archery skills, but even if he is just a scholar who can't draw a bow, he can always protect us behind him when danger comes. He is our most powerful warrior." Ana looked at her and said, "Will that Han Chinese be your warrior?" Tang Ning rested for a while and went directly to Wan Yanyan's tent. Ana glanced at him, got up and left. Wan Yanyan lay on the bed and said, "No more fighting today, tomorrow." "I'm not here to fight with you." Tang Ning glanced at her and said, "I didn't come to the grassland to fight with you. I need you to tell me the current situation of the grassland." As soon as he finished speaking, his expression was stunned. Many materials on the grassland are in short supply, and silk, tea, porcelain, etc., which only Chenchu has, are even rarer. Since the friction between them and the Han people intensified, even those adventurous merchants are unwilling to come here. They are covered with sheepskin, and the workmanship is very rough. Silk satin quilts like this are also scarce materials here. Tang Ning thought that even if they were poor here, a princess should not lack these. Unexpectedly, her own bedding was made of rough sheepskin, while he was covered with a high-quality silk satin quilt. Thinking about it carefully, the faint fragrance in his quilt seemed a little familiar. Ever since Wan Yanyan was forced to take a bath by him, she liked this thing. There was no more peculiar smell on her body, but there was a natural body fragrance, which was very unique. Tang Ning glanced at her and turned to walk out of the tent. Wang Yanyan looked at him and asked, "Where are you going?" Tang Ning said, "I'll return your quilt to you." "No need." Wang Yanyan waved her hand and said, "You are used to sleeping on silk, and I am used to sleeping on sheepskin. No need to change." Tang Ning stopped, looked at her, walked back, sat down by the bed, and said, "Then let's talk about the situation." "The situation?" Wang Yanyan got up from the bed and said, "The situation is that on the grassland, the eldest brother and the third brother have the most tribes and the greatest power. No one will listen to me, and no one is willing to coexist peacefully with the state of Chen. What do you think we should do?" The intelligence about the grassland that the state of Chen investigated was naturally not as detailed as what he heard from Wang Yanyan. The Sushan people had dozens of tribes, large and small, which were originally independent and did not interfere with each other. Among them, tribes often attacked and annexed each other. Small tribes gathered into large tribes, and large tribes were divided into small tribes. This has been going on for dozens or hundreds of years. The Wanyan tribe was the first to unify the Sushan tribes. Now, all the Sushan tribes are under the jurisdiction of the Wanyan tribe. Except for more than 10 large tribes including Jiagushuhu, which are still controlled by Wanyan Yan's father, the remaining dozens of small and medium tribes are controlled by the 3 princes. After the death of the second prince, all the tribes under his command fell into the hands of Wanyan Yan. Of course, the 3 were originally evenly matched, but since Wanyan Yan rescued Xiaoju and was punished by the Khan, she only had 14 tribes left, less than the 18 tribes of the third prince, and even less than the 22 tribes of the eldest prince. Naturally, her voice in the tribe is the smallest. Tang Ning looked at her and said, "I do have a plan." Wang Yanyan's eyes lit up and asked, "What plan?" "You know, I know some poison and witchcraft." Tang Ning looked at her and said, "Invite the eldest prince and the third prince to have a simple meal here, and say that you are sending a few tribes to them. I will poison the food and kill them." Wang Yanyan twisted his thigh hard and said, "They are my brothers, how can I poison them?" Tang Ning covered his thigh, glanced at her, and said, "Aina told me that they have tried to assassinate you many times in the past 2 years. They are them, and I am me." Wang Yanyan shook her head and said, "I won't do this, and they won't come here, you won't see them." The assassination plan was rejected by Wang Yanyan before it even started, and it was declared a failure. Tang Ning shook his head and said, "If you don't poison, then don't invite dinner, just give the third prince 4 tribes, just the 4 youngest ones." Wang Yanyan asked in surprise, "Why? You have given the eldest prince 4 tribes, but you don't give the third prince 1. What do you think the third prince will think?" Tang Ning looked at her and said, "There is an old saying among the Han people that it is not the lack of tribes that is worrying, but the inequality. Even brothers should be treated equally, otherwise there will be conflicts. The third prince must hate you very much now." Wang Yanyan said, "But I don't have many tribes to begin with. If I give 4 more, I will be even worse than them." "It doesn't matter, I'm still here." Tang Ning waved his hand and said, "You don't understand this kind of thing, just stand behind me and watch." Playing tactics and strategies, many times, advancing is retreating, retreating is advancing, advancing is retreating, false and true, true and false, these things, with the brain of the little girl, must not be clear. Tang Ning was thinking about the next plan in his heart and fell into deep thought. Naturally, he didn't notice that Wang Yanyan was sitting next to him, looking at him absent-mindedly. She looked at Tang Ning and murmured, "Standing behind you." Fortunate young gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 703. Since ancient times, those who achieve great things have not adhered to trivial details. They are reluctant to let go of their children and cannot trap the wolf. Wanyan wants to be Khan, and naturally she cannot rely on her 14 tribes. She relies on Tangning, Chen Guo's 10,000 cavalry, and the 400,000 troops south of Yinshan Mountain at any time. The big stage of the grassland can be left to the eldest prince and the third prince. Tangning thought about her future plan and asked casually, which are the 4 tribes with the fewest people and the least resources under your command? He asked this question, but received no response for a long time. Tangning turned around and saw Wanyan just looking at him blankly, wondering what she was thinking. Little Manu is really unreliable. He was talking to her about serious things, but she actually got distracted at this time. Tangning waved her hand in front of her eyes and said, "Wake up." Ah, Wanyan came back to her senses, looked at him and asked, "What did you just say?" Tangning looked at her angrily and said, "Which are the 4 tribes with the smallest number of people under your command?" Wanyan thought for a while and said, "Wul, Azun, Tuda, Pali, these 4 tribes only have a few hundred people." "Okay, then give these 4 tribes to the third prince." Tangning looked at her and asked, "Do you still have any questions?" Wanyan nodded, "I'll listen to you." Tangning glanced at her in surprise. Although the little barbarian girl wasn't smart enough, she seemed to be more obedient than he expected. It didn't matter that she wasn't smart enough. As long as she was willing to listen to the opinions of smart people, she was still a good child. Tangning looked at her and said, "Then you make arrangements, I'll go back and catch up on some sleep." He hadn't slept well in the past few days. He finally got a good night's sleep, but when he woke up, she asked him to have a fight again. The energy loss was too great and he needed to make up for it slowly. Wanyan came back to her senses, looked at him, and asked, "What if this doesn't work? Then let Chen's 400,000 strong army invade the grassland and seize the Khan seat for you. If you are too soft, you will naturally have to be hard. The task given by Chen Huang is to solve the grassland matter no matter what during this trip to the north. If they are good, Chen Guo will provide them with food, provide them with goods, and improve their quality of life. This will not be a problem. If they don't behave, they'll all eat grenades." Tangning said nothing, returned to her tent, closed the door, rolled herself into the bed, and soon fell asleep. At the same time, a piece of news spread throughout the camps of the Wen tribe. The 4th princess was planning to give the 4 tribes including Wu Li, Ozun, Tuda, Po Li to the 3rd prince. This news was like thunder and shocked many people's jaws. In the Wanyan tribe, what determines the eldest prince, the 3rd prince and the 4th princess's say in the clan is the number of clans in their hands. The more tribes one owns, the greater the right to speak. The 4th princess does not have many tribes in her hands anymore. Now she has given 4 more tribes to the 3rd prince. Doesn't it mean that she has given up fighting for the position of Khan? Even many of her own tribes believed that it was impossible for her to win over the eldest prince and the 3rd prince, but giving up on her own and failing to compete for the throne had completely different meanings. Ayana strode into the camp and looked at Wanyan, confused. "You are crazy, why did you give the tribes of Wul and Azun to the 3rd prince? What will you do if you give them to him?" Wanyan said nonchalantly, "Anyway, they are not of the same mind as us. They have wanted to be on our side for a long time. It is better to give it to the 3rd brother." Ayana said, "Do you know that if you give these 4 to the 3rd prince, you will only have 10 left in your hands?" Wanyan glanced at her mouth and asked, "If we can't have one mind, is there any difference between 10 and 20? Aina looked at her, thought for a moment, and asked, "Did that Han man give you a bad idea?" Wanyan looked at her with a shy smile on her face and said, "Aina, he said he wanted me to stand behind him." Aina touched her forehead and saw that there was no fever, so she said angrily, "The person who makes you stand behind him may not be your man. There are many women standing behind him. Your martial arts is not the highest, nor is it the best beautiful, do you think he will like you?" It doesn't matter, Wanyan Yan said nonchalantly. The Han people have a saying, love grows over time. He is in the grassland now, and he will stay for a long time. I have plenty of time. Aina glanced at her and said, the Han people also have a saying that when a woman likes a man, she will become a fool. You have already become a fool. When you don't have a tribe in your hand, let me see what you do. Wan Yanyan looked at her and said, he said that he would let Chen's 400,000 strong army enter the grassland and snatch the Khan seat for me. She looked at Aina and asked, he said that Chen's army is very powerful now. Is it true? Aina thought of Chen Guo's 10,000 fully armed cavalry and the terrifying weapons she had seen several times. She nodded slowly and said, it's very powerful. Another pasture. In the central tent. The third prince looked at one person with a sullen face and asked, you haven't caught her yet? A man lowered his head and said, the army can't catch up with them. If we disperse and encircle them, we can't defeat them. In these days, we have suffered heavy casualties in order to catch her. Third prince, should we give up? Give up, the third prince smashed the teacup and said, I have made a bet with the eldest prince. Whoever catches her first can win a tribe from the other party. Do you want to see me lose? The man immediately lowered his head and said, I dare not. The third prince already has 4 fewer tribes than the eldest prince. If he loses another one, won't he be completely suppressed by him? By then, the Wanyan tribe will soon fall into the hands of the eldest prince. Who is strong and who is weak in the Wanyan tribe, in the final analysis, is still a question of the number of tribes in his hands. If the third prince can control most of the tribes, he is the Khan, and what does the eldest prince have to do? These days, the eldest prince has relied on the loyalty of more than 20 tribal leaders to suppress the third prince everywhere. The third prince cannot lose even a tribe. The man looked at him and said, Third prince, we must fight for a few more tribes. Do you think I don't know? The third prince waved his hand impatiently and said, I also want to fight for a few more tribes, but most of them are with my father, and the others have been divided up. Will the sky drop a few tribes for me? A figure ran in from outside the tent in a panic and said, Third prince, I have something important to report. The third prince glanced at him and asked, have you captured the princess of Chu? The man shook his head and said, no. Why are you so happy if you don't have one? The third prince looked at him coldly and said, tell me, what happened? The man swallowed and said, replying to the third prince, the fourth princess said that the third prince had a hard time fighting the enemy, and she also wanted to lend a hand to the third prince. She gave the 4 tribes of Wul, Azun, Tuda, and Pali to the third prince. These 4 tribes have already migrated here. The third prince stood there in a daze, picked his ears, and said, what did you say just now? Say it again. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fortunate Young Gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 704. Inside the camp, the third prince looked surprised. She is willing to help me. The man thought for a while and said, the 3 princes, Wu Li, Ozun, Tuda, and Poli, are not many in number. The ones that the eldest prince got are not that many. The third prince laughed twice and said, now Wanyan Chu has 22, and I also have 22. I am no worse than him. Wanyan department, it's not his turn to make the decision. He sat down at the table and said, Yanner's heart is indeed with me, and my love for her when she was a child is not in vain. The man looked suspicious and said, if the third princess is really willing to help your highness, why don't you give us the Wen and Jiagu tribes? The 4 tribes of Wul, Azun, Tuda, and Pali combined are not as good as Wen half of the department. The third prince waved his hand and said, if she gives us the Wen and Jiagu tribes, the remaining ones in her hands may soon fall into the hands of Wanyan Chu. Although she has been confused since she was a child, it's not like you can't even see this. The man added, then could this be the fourth princess's plan, so that after we and the eldest prince are evenly matched, we will fight each other, and she will stand aside and watch the battle to benefit. The third prince glanced at him and said, she is not that confused, nor is she that smart. He looked at the man again and said, you personally lead people to greet those four tribes, just in case Wanyansha gets in the way. The man no longer doubted, bowed, and said, yes. Another pasture. The eldest prince slapped his hand on the table, looked at one person, and said angrily, what are you talking about? The fourth princess gave four tribes to Wanyanhong. The man said, my subordinates have gone to see it in person. Wu Li, through mediation, several tribes have moved to the third prince's place. The fourth princess really gave them four tribes. The eldest prince said, what about us? The man shook his head and said, we didn't, but the great Khan gave the four tribes of the four princesses to the prince. That's what I deserve, the eldest prince said angrily, that's what she did wrong, and the Khan punished her and rewarded me. What's going on with her now? Is she joining forces with Wanyanhong to deal with me? The man sighed and said, the third prince now has 22 books. It will be difficult for us to do anything else. While the Khan was in bed and recuperating, decisions on all matters in Wanyan's department were not the sole discretion of one person. The Sushan tribes unified by the Wanyan tribe are different from countries like Chenchu. The Sushan tribes originally operated independently. Even if they follow the Wanyan tribe, they are not their slaves. They also have the right to participate in decision-making. This kind of power does not distinguish between large and small departments. Wanyan department treats everyone equally. This is the basis for their ability to unify so many tribes in such a short period of time, and the reason why so many small and medium-sized tribes are willing to be driven by them. And this also leads to the fact that whoever has more tribes under his eldest prince or the third prince will have more say. In the past, the eldest prince suppressed the third prince, but now they are evenly matched. If the eldest prince wants to do anything, he needs the third prince. Agreed, if the fourth princess and the third prince unite, the eldest prince will really have little say in the clan. No wonder the eldest prince was so angry at the moment. He alone could not resist the two of them joining forces. The eldest prince looked gloomy, suppressed the anger in his heart, and said, take someone to see, Wanyanhong cannot let Wanyanhong take advantage of this. When she first came to Wanyanyan's territory, Tang Ning had 2 full days of sleep before she felt that her condition was back to its peak. He had previously thought that Wanyanyan was doing well here, but after arriving here, he discovered that her restraint or intimidation of the tribes under her was far from enough. It's no wonder that although the Sushan people speak based on their strength and their preference for boys over girls is not as serious as that of the Han people, it is still difficult for a woman to sweat and have no real skills to convince the public. Especially after giving it to the third prince and the 4 tribes, no one even convinced her. After knowing that Tang Ning made this decision for her, Ayana looked at him differently than before, as if he didn't know anything and was just here to stir up trouble in the grassland. Tang Ning didn't bother to explain to her, but after Wanyanyan realized what she was doing, she called him into the tent and asked in surprise, why on earth did we give these 4 movies to third brother? The reason why Tang Ning did this was naturally because with Wanyanyan's current power, she was unable to participate in the fight for Khan. The first thing she had to do was to strengthen the cohesion of the tribes under her. The prince and the third prince will add some fire. As for how the fire will burn, it depends on them. I'll explain this to you later. Tang Ning looked at her and said, I need your help with something. Wanyanyan asked expectantly, what's going on? Tang Ning looked at her and said, I want you to help me keep an eye on the news about Princess Chang Ning of Chu State. Wanyanyan asked, is that the woman with big breasts we saw in Chu State? Tang Ning nodded and said, that's her. Wanyanyan glanced at him and asked, what is her relationship with you? Do you care about her so much? Tang Ning said, she is my wife. Wei Nianyun was shocked and said, what, she is too? Tang Ning looked at her and asked in surprise, what, is there a problem? Wan Yanyan lay on the bed, covered herself with a quilt, and said, I'm going to sleep, please get out. Tang Ning tugged on the quilt and said, why are you sleeping in broad daylight? Besides, you didn't just wake up. You mind me, I can sleep whenever I want. Don't you sleep during the day too? Wan Yanyan's impatient voice came from the bed. Go to sleep, go to sleep. Tang Ning glanced at her and said, don't forget what I told you. Wei Nianyun wrapped herself in the quilt and was sulking. At a certain moment, she felt someone pat her through the quilt. I told you that I'm going to bed, please leave quickly, I don't want to see you. She got out of the quilt, glared at Aina, her expression was stunned, and she sat down on the bed in frustration, and said, why is it you? Aina pursed her lips, her expression a little complicated, and said, I have something to tell you. Wan Yanyan asked, what's the matter? Aina said, the 4 tribes of Wul, Azun, Tuda, and Pali have moved back. Wan Yanyan was startled and asked doubtfully, third brother, don't you want it? No. Aina shook her head and said, when the third prince sent people to pick them up, he met the eldest prince's people. The 2 sides fought over a trivial matter and injured dozens of people. The Khan knew about it. Later, he was very angry. Not only did he let the Ular, Azun, Tuda, and Pali tribes come back, he also severely punished the eldest prince and the third prince. The Orl and Yusaza tribes were all assigned to us. When Wei Nianyun was stunned, Ayana looked at him and said with conviction, I finally understand why Tang Ning is already a senior official of the Chen kingdom at such a young age. With him helping us, maybe the princess really has I hope to become the new Khan, he is really awesome. How powerful. Wan Yanyan secretly spat and said, he is not powerful at all, he is just a stupid pig. Fortunate young gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 705. When Tang Ning yawned and walked out of the tent, she looked up and saw Aina standing at the door, looking straight at him. He subconsciously touched the corners of his mouth and found that there was no saliva left. He glanced at Ayana and asked, is something wrong? I'm sorry. Ayana looked serious, bowed to him, and said, Ayana is short-sighted and cannot see that you are far-sighted. Please don't blame me. Huh, Tang Ning was surprised for a moment, not knowing which song she was singing. Because of the 4 books given to the third prince, Ayana's attitude towards him has not been very good these past 2 days. Today she said these words uncharacteristically and used the honorific title. The contrast was so big that Tang Ning had to wonder if she was a relative is visiting. The eldest prince and the third prince will fight because of this matter. Your Excellency has already expected it, right? Aina looked at him, his eyes flashed, and said, the eldest prince will not watch the third prince grow stronger, and the third prince will also. She would not miss the opportunity to grow stronger. It seemed that the 4th princess gave 4 tribes to the third prince, but in fact she wanted to see the eldest prince and the third prince fight over this. Is this a common tactic used by the Han people? 1 peach kills 2 she, the Han people's art of war is really powerful. 2 peaches killed 3 warriors. Tang Ning explained, and then asked in surprise, the eldest prince and the third prince started fighting. Aina said, on the way of the migration of the 4 tribes, the men of the eldest prince and the third prince seriously injured dozens of people due to quarrels. When the Khan learned about it, he was furious. Not only did he return the 4 tribes, we brought 2 tribes from each of the eldest prince and the third prince. After Ayana explained, she looked at Tang Ning and said respectfully, it was Ayana's fault before. I hope you won't blame me. Tang Ning looked at her and said in confusion, oh, yes, how could that be possible? Tang Ning returned to the tent and sat down, digesting what Aina had just said. The men of the eldest prince and the third prince fought over the 4 troops and seriously injured dozens of people. Wanyan Khan was furious and ordered Wanyan Yan to take back the 4 troops. He also punished the 2 princes and cut 2 from each of their hands. The department is given to Wanyan Yan. In this way, Wanyan Yan's losses when she rescued Xiaoju were recovered. On the contrary, the third prince suffered the greatest loss, with only 16 tribes left, 2 less than Wanyan Yan. This actually deviated greatly from Tang Ning's original intention. His original intention was just to let the 2 princes, who were evenly matched, check and contain each other. In this way, Wanyan Yan could be a profitable fisherman behind the scenes. With his many years of experience in the struggle between the 2 kings of Chen Kingdom and Kangduan, this one trick works again and again. But he didn't expect that there is no best, only better. The return of those 4 films was beyond his expectation, and the extra 4 films were purely an unexpected gain. This may be because the prairie people have a hotter temper than the Han people. The fight between the eldest prince and the third prince created a new pattern of the serious situation. It was a bit hasty to decide the tribe's affiliation in this way. Tang Ning couldn't figure out Wanyan Yan's father's thoughts, so she came to her camp to ask her. Wanyan Yan looked at him and said, "The grassland is different from your Chen country. Only the person with the greatest merit can be the Khan. If the big brother has not accumulated enough merit and is overpowered by the 3 king brothers, the Khan will kill his subordinate's tribe to brother 3, and vice versa. Their so-called credit is nothing more than defeating Chen Chu or defeating Hyman. The difficulty of these 2 things is now at the hell level. If they can't get much credit from the outside, they have no choice but to fight inside." Naturally, Tang Ning couldn't let Wanyan Yan attack Chen Chu. Hyman and them were in a truce for the time being, and there was another matter that needed to be resolved urgently. Wanyan Yan now has 18 tribes in her hands, 2 more than the third prince. However, these 18 tribes are like a plate of loose sand, most of which are just grass on the wall. They will fall wherever the wind blows, and they will fall wherever the wind blows. It has little effect. Before fighting against the outside world, you must first settle down the inside. Tang Ning looked at her and said, "First gather all the leaders of the 18 tribes here." Wanyan Yan looked at the arched woman at the door and said, "You, please have someone notify these 17 tribes and ask their leaders to come to the Wen tribe." Tang Ning looked at her and said in surprise, "Don't you ask why?" Wanyan Yan said, "Didn't you ask me to summon you? You will do whatever I ask you to do. You won't hurt me anyway. It feels really good to be trusted by others, but it doesn't work if you are careless." Tang Ning looked at her and said, "You can't trust everyone. After all, some people have ulterior motives. They may be helping you on the surface, but in fact they don't know. What are you planning?" Wanyan Yan blinked and asked, "Then why did you help me?" Tang Ning looked at her and said seriously, "For peace." A righteous reason like peace actually made her unhappy. Women on the grassland were indeed different from Han women. Tang Ning walked out of the tent when a familiar voice came from the front. "Grown-ups." Tang Ning raised her head and saw a person in front of her, and asked in surprise, "Why are you here?" Chen Zhou stepped forward and said, "The army has arrived in Fengzhou. My subordinates saw General Xiao, and then followed the people from the Wen tribe." When Tang Ning asked Wanyan Yan to send Xiaoju back, she left a few confidants behind to keep in touch with the 2 places. Unexpectedly, Chen Zhou came over with them. But it's good this way. With a discerning person around him, he doesn't have to do many things himself. Wanyan Yan walked out of the tent, looked at Chen Zhou, and gritted her teeth and said, "It's you." She looked at the woman with a bow on her back and said, "Tie him up for me." Chen Zhou's face changed drastically, and he said, "Princess, it was all misunderstandings before, misunderstandings." Tang Ning knew that she had been tied up like a dumpling by Chen Zhou's hands, and she was full of resentment, but this was a different time. She looked at her and comforted her, the past is over, he is one of us now. Don't talk. Wang Yanyan glared at him, looked at Chen Zhou who was tied up, and said, this is not how you tie him up. Chen Zhou looked at Tang Ning, his eyes full of help. Tang Ning walked up and whispered, just let her vent, don't worry, she won't really do anything to you. In the end, Chen Zhou tied himself up, using the method he was best at. The scene was so beautiful that Tang Ning didn't dare to look at it, and took the initiative to return to her tent. Wang Yanyan tied him to a pillar and let him go after 2 meals. Then she let him go, which also meant that their previous feud was written off. After being hungry for a whole day, Chen Zhou was eating a whole roasted lamb leg. Tang Ning looked at him and said, tomorrow I will have someone escort you. You go back to Fengzhou again and give a letter to General Xiao. Fortunate young gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 706. Sushan belongs to the tribes of the 3 great Khans. Although they will not all gather together, they will not be too far apart. Most of them are within a radius of 50 miles and are distributed in a star pattern. Once the Great Khan calls for it, all the ministries can arrive within 1 day. This wartime arrangement will last until winter comes. Wang Yanyan had already sent out the news 3 days ago. On the first day, 10 people arrived, and on the second day, 4 people arrived. Including the leaders of the Wen tribe, until the third day, there were still 3 leaders who had not come. Tang Ning looked at Wang Yanyan and asked, which leaders of the 3 departments haven't come over? Wang Yanyan said, the Nipang tribe has been following the eldest prince for 10 years. The heads of the Oral tribe and the Yusaza tribe are loyal to the 3rd prince. Tang Ning asked, are these the ones that were just transferred? Wang Yanyan nodded and said, it's them. As soon as she finished speaking, her expression suddenly changed. She pulled Tang Ning aside, looked at a horse galloping past him, and said angrily, Chief Wuda, riding horses is prohibited in the ministry, don't you know? The unshaven man got off the horse and laughed. In the past, there was no such rule in the great prince's place. Why don't the warriors on the grassland ride horses? How can they ride women like this pretty boy? Tang Ning couldn't understand what the man was talking about, but judging from his expression, it didn't look like he was saying anything nice. He looked at Wang Yanyan and asked, what is he talking about? Wang Yanyan said, he said you are a pretty boy. Tang Ning was puzzled. In your prairie dialect, do the words little pretty face need to be so long? What Wuda just said was unpalatable, so Wang Yanyan naturally couldn't explain it and could only nod. Tang Ning looked at her with disbelief. He and Wang Yanyan had learned a few words of prairie dialect, and the guy just mentioned woman clearly. He glanced at the man and said, tell him who is the warrior and who is the pretty boy. You will know after a comparison. Wang Yanyan looked at the man and said a few words in prairie language. The man seemed to be insulted, with an angry look on his face. He looked at Tang Ning with extremely fierce eyes. Tang Ning looked at Wang Yanyan and asked, he agreed. Wang Yanyan nodded. Before she could speak, Tang Ning had already disappeared from her side. Not far ahead, the man felt his eyes blur and flew out. Young pretty boy, right. A warrior, right. It's great to be strong, and it's great to have a beard. Who are you saying is a woman? Who are you saying is a woman? A moment later, Tang Ning panted slightly and walked towards Wang Yanyan. The man was already lying on the ground and could not get up. In the past few days since Tang Ning came to the grassland, she had already discovered that the folk customs here were different from Chenchu's. There was no point in reasoning. Whoever had a strong fist would be the one who was right. Only if your fists are harder than his, will he listen to your reasoning. Aina came over from a distance and said, Princess, the leaders of the Oral and Yusaza tribes have arrived. 2 of the remaining 3 came. Tang Ning looked at her and asked, where are the people from the Nipang ancient tribe? Wang Yanyan pointed to the figure on the grass in front and said, there. The leader of the Nipangu tribe came late and was seriously injured by someone from the Wuyan tribe. The remaining 17 leaders were sitting in the tent with different expressions on their faces. Wuda belonged to the eldest prince. Although the leaders of the Oral and Yusaza tribes were happy to see him make a fool of himself, they thought that they had arrived 2 days late. After seeing Wuda's tragic situation, they couldn't help but feel a little guilty. The reason why Wuda was beaten was because he insulted the princess. Whether he insulted her or not will not be known until he wakes up. Wuda belongs to the eldest prince, so it is not unusual for him to suffer losses from the fourth princess, and no one will be shocked. But the news announced by the fourth princess next, after a short period of silence, almost made the entire camp boil. The fourth princess summoned the leaders of the 18 tribes this time to announce a major event. She plans to select the strong men from the 18 tribes to form a team and maintain the daily expenses of the team. The fourth princess will be responsible for all. In addition, the family of each enlisted person can also receive a monthly subsidy of 10 kilograms of grain. Food is extremely precious to people on the grasslands. Once their cattle and sheep suffer some disaster, even small and medium-sized tribes cannot last through the winter. Wanyan tribe unified these tribes and would not provide them with food, because Wanyan tribe's own food was not enough. This was also a major reason why they wanted to attack Chenchu. Taking over the wealthy Chen and Chu states would solve their food crisis. If the fourth princess can provide them with food, then cattle and sheep will no longer be their only reliance. 10 kilograms of food per month, even without cattle and sheep, is enough for them to survive a bitter cold winter. You can imagine how big a reaction it will cause when they bring this news back to the tribe. Tang Ning didn't wait for the leaders to bring the news back, so she asked Wan Yanyan to arrange for people to inform the various ministries. What she lacks now is people's hearts. If you want to win people's hearts, you have to see what they lack most. For the prairie people who have spent the summer and are worried about the winter, the most lacking thing is naturally food. Since they are short of food, then give them food. What Chen Guo is most in need of is food. Xiaoju is arranged to perform a play so that Wan Yanyan can watch it from time to time. If she grabs some food, she can firmly hold the tribe in her hands. As a qualified leader, you can't just talk about ideals with your subordinates. Ideals can't fill your stomach, and what these 18 tribes need is something that can fill their stomachs. For those who are afraid of poverty and hunger, I'm afraid they don't even dare to think about what it would be like to live without worrying about hunger. Yuta tribe. Really, if you join the fourth princess's team, you can get 10 kilograms of food every month. More than 10 kilograms, if you can get military merit, you can get more food. In addition to military merit, the higher the position, the more food you will get every month. Hearing this news, the middle-aged men of the Wuda tribe couldn't sit still. Instead of being idle in the tribe, it's better to follow the fourth princess. Not only will they be provided with food and accommodation, but their family's life will also be guaranteed. Even when they followed the Khan to fight against the black barbarians and invade Chenchu, they never had such benefits. One person looked at the messenger sent by Wan Yanyan and asked, "Are you telling the truth? Would the fourth princess lie to you?" The man glanced at them and said, "Don't say I didn't remind you that the fourth princess wants someone this time, first come first served. If you are late, you will have no chance." Hearing this, the man showed a nervous look on his face and said, "I'll go. I'll go too. And me." The fourth princess still has a lot of credibility in their hearts. The opportunity is not to be missed, and everyone rushed to sign up. The messenger waved his hand and said, "Don't worry, come one by one." At the same time, the same scene was staged in Wool, Azuan, Tuda, Pali and other tribes at the same time. Nipangu tribe. Leader, is this true? Should we go? 10 kilograms of food. Dozens of figures crowded in the tent, staring at Wuda, the leader of the Nipangu tribe. Wuda was lying on the bed, looking at the dozens of figures in the tent, gritting his teeth and saying, "You believe this lie? Where does the fourth princess get so much food? Use your brains to think about it. Did her food fall from the sky?" You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fortunate Young Gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 707. 10 kilograms of rice per person. 1,000 people means 10,000 kilograms, 10,000 people means 100,000 kilograms, so we need so much every month, and we have to feed so many soldiers. Where can we get so much food? In 3 days, Wang Yanyan asked Tang Ning this question more than many times. This can't be blamed on her. As a princess of the grassland, she still has to worry about the problem of food. She can't imagine how much food is lacking in a country like Chen State, which can survive for decades by relying on food reserves. The 2 roads of Jiangnan, more than 40 states, can be called the granary of the world. Not to mention Chen State, even if Chenchu is fed at the same time, plus the grassland, it is more than enough. After Tang Ning's trip to Jiangnan, the 2 roads of Jiangnan, nearly 40 states, have been under the control of the court. There is no pressure to allocate some food to help them. As the marshal of this operation, Tang Ning still has this permission. As long as it can promote peace between the grassland and Chen State, the wealthy Emperor Chen does not care about these hundreds of thousands of kilograms of food. If a war really breaks out, the loss of Chen State will be much greater than this. Tang Ning looked at Wang Yanyan and said, "If you believe me, let Ayana lead the brothers of Wuyan tribe to the outside of Fengzhou, 100 miles north of Yinshan Mountain, where the food is." Wang Yanyan glanced at him and said, "Of course I believe you." She walked out of the tent and whispered a few words to Ayana, who nodded and said, "I'll go right away." Wang Yanyan then walked back, looked at Tang Ning, and asked, "What should we do now?" "What should we do?" Tang Ning stretched and asked, "What do you usually do?" Wang Yanyan thought for a moment and said, "Most of the time I go hunting." "Will you go with me?" "No." Tang Ning waved his hand and said, "I can't ride a horse." Wang Yanyan thought of something, her eyes lit up, and said, "I can teach you." Wang Yanyan's riding skills are beyond reproach. Among all the people Tang Ning knows, no one's riding skills are better than hers. Learning riding skills from her is indeed a rare opportunity. Riding and shooting are his shortcomings, and he has long wanted to make up for this shortcoming. Tang Ning thought for a moment and said, "Then you can teach me archery by the way." Okay, Wang Yanyan was very interested in being able to crush Tang Ning in some aspects and be his teacher. She brought dozens of guards and left the camp with Tang Ning. Aina and Xiaoju met, and it would take at least 10 days to go back and forth. During this time, Tang Ning had nothing to do, so he went out with Wang Yanyan to ride horses and shoot arrows. Wang Yanyan's martial arts were average, but riding and shooting were top-notch. After a few days, Tang Ning could clearly feel his progress. He and Wang Yanyan were riding horses and shooting rabbits in the grassland, having a great time. 100 miles north of Yinshan Mountain, Xiaoju was riding on a horse, holding a steamed bun in one hand and a green onion in the other. He took a bite of the steamed bun with the green onion and looked at the vast grassland in front of him, wondering, "It's so late, why haven't you come yet?" Lu Ya stood beside him, looked at him, frowned and said, "Can you stop eating this?" Xiaoju glanced at her and said, "What's wrong with green onions? Green onions are good things. Some people want to eat them but don't have them yet. I was caught by them. These days, I can't even eat if I want to." At this moment, a young general who was lying on the ground with his ears pressed tightly to the ground suddenly got up, ran over quickly, and said in a hurry, "General, there are cavalry coming 10 miles ahead, about 500 people." Lu Ya looked at Xiaoju and asked, "Are they coming?" I don't know if it's them. Xiaoju shook his head and said, let's see first. The distance of 10 miles was reached in a flash on the grassland. In a flash, the ground under their feet began to shake, and a black line appeared in front of them. The young general looked far away and said, General, look at their flags, they should be people from the Wen tribe. Wen tribe, that's it. Xiaoju smiled, turned his horse's head, and said, retreat. The young general responded, and hundreds of knights turned their horses' heads at the same time and galloped forward, leaving only more than 100 carriages and bulging cloth bags on the carriages, and no one knew what they were filled with. At the same time, the cavalry of the Wen tribe had also discovered the people in front. A man next to Ayana changed his face and was about to order the whole army to be on alert, but he found that the other party turned around and ran away. On the grassland, they are the absolute kings. When Chen Chu's army saw them, they might run away, but it was the first time he saw them run away so easily. Everyone drove their horses forward and found that there were more than 100 carriages left in the original place. One person looked at the direction where Xiaoju and others evacuated, looked at Ayana, and asked, Leader, do you want to chase them? Ayana looked at him and said, let's see what it is first. The man jumped off the horse, came to the carriage, opened a bag, and when he saw the white rice inside, his expression froze. As if he had thought of something, he opened a few more bags. When he saw that the carriages were all loaded with rice, he was ecstatic and laughed loudly, Chief, these are grains, these are all grains. Chief Aina led the warriors of the Wen tribe to plunder a grain transport team of the state of Chen, seized a large amount of grain, and transported it back to the Wen tribe an hour ago. This is a rare big harvest. To celebrate, each household of the Wen tribe was given 20 kilograms of grain, and a full sheep banquet will be held at night. The Wen tribe is full of singing and dancing. When Wanyanyan saw the food, her eyes were shining. If the Khan was like this, it goes without saying how happy her subordinates were. On the second day, Wanyanyan transported the captured food to various tribes according to the number of conscript ions. Wuda tribe. Everyone watched the carts of food being transported in, swallowing their saliva from time to time. One person stood next to the cart full of food and shouted, Kul, Ishbu, Wuda's family, come and get the food. Kul, Ishbu, and Wuda were all warriors who participated in the conscription of the fourth princess. Seeing their families take away the food, and seeing the food on the cart getting less and less, some people who were still waiting and watching finally couldn't help it. What the fourth princess said was not empty words, this was real food, food that could save lives. One person joined the army and the whole family was not hungry. If you miss this good thing, you will never have it again. I'll go too. Count me in. I'm here first, you go to the back. Don't push, come one by one, come one by one. For people who live on the grassland and worry about their livelihood every year, nothing can make them feel more at ease than food. After the fourth princess fulfilled her promise, the tribes under her responded one by one. Anyone with able-bodied men in their families joined her guards without hesitation. For those who have no able-bodied men in their families, the fourth princess will also provide them with some food to maintain their livelihood. This is the first time that the tribes under her have truly felt the benefits of being under the fourth princess. In the past few days, many people from more than 10 tribes knelt in the direction of the Wen tribe and paid their highest respects to the fourth princess. In the Nipangu tribe, Wuda looked at the warriors of the tribe who surrounded him, and got up from the bed with difficulty, and said with difficulty, did her food really fall from the sky? Fortunate young gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 708. No matter whether the fourth princess's food falls from the sky or is stolen, as long as you follow her, you will have 10 kilograms of food every month. How can you not refuse the food that is given to you for free? With this food, at least the children will not go hungry. If the eldest prince can give us food, we will follow him. After hearing what these tribesmen said, Wu's face darkened and he said angrily, "Do you want to betray the eldest prince?" A man said, "It was Wu Dayu who wanted to follow the eldest prince at first. You said that if you followed the eldest prince, you would not have to go hungry in the future, so everyone listened to you. But after you follow the elder prince, he will only ask for people and food from us. When did you take care of our life and death?" Kul is right. In addition to asking for food from us, what else can the eldest prince do? It's better to follow the eldest prince than the fourth princess. "Shut up," Wu Da looked at them and said solemnly, "I am the leader and I have the final say. No one is allowed to go to the fourth princess, otherwise the clan rules will apply." Everyone's faces showed anger. If they could enjoy the blessings with the fourth princess, who would be willing to be treated as a human being by the eldest prince? Wu Da himself wanted to be treated like a dog to the eldest prince and completely ignored their feelings. One person gritted his teeth, looked at Wu Da, and said, "Chief, I want to challenge you." Wu Da looked at him with a look of disbelief on his face and said, "Kul, what did you say?" "All grassland tribes advocate absolute force. Only the strongest warriors can become leaders. Wu Da is the #1 warrior of the Nipangu tribe. He used his iron fists to wrest the title of leader from the previous leader. Bit. In the past few years, the young warriors of the Nipangu tribe challenged him many times, but no one could beat him. The Nipangu tribe members were convinced by him, and over time, no one challenged him anymore. The man named Kul looked at him and said seriously, "Leader Wu Da, I want to challenge you." Wu Da's ribs were broken just a few days ago, and he is still recovering. It is difficult to even get up. At this time, he can't even beat a child, let alone the second warrior Kul. His face turned red and he said, "You are taking advantage of others' danger and will be laughed at by everyone. No, we support color. We want to follow the fourth princess. If leader Wu Da wants to follow the eldest prince, just go and follow him yourself." Wu Da looked at color with a fighting spirit on his face turned pale, and he said in a trembling voice, "If you have something to say, say it well, if you have something to say, say it well." Many of the Sushan tribes do not have hereditary systems. The Wanyan tribe has absolute power in the tribe because of the Wanyan clan's strength. Like the Nipangu tribe, the tribe itself is not large and the leader is not fixed. Generally, the capable person takes over. Yesterday, hundreds of warriors from the Nipangu tribe came over and declared their allegiance to Wanyan Yan. Their original leader was overthrown, and the new leader led a group of warriors to join Wanyan Yan's bodyguard. Coincidentally, the Oral tribe and the Yosaza tribe that had come over from the third prince also changed their leaders within one day and led their warriors to join them. For a tribe that is starved of food and precarious, the eldest prince and the third prince combined are not as useful as 10 pounds of rice. Wanyan Yan hummed a light song, stood on the grassland, looked at Tang Ning on the horse, and said, "I'm so stupid. How many times have I told you that you have to move forward when going uphill?" Just as Tang Ning was about to adjust, Wanyan Yan climbed onto the horse's back, pressed tightly against his body, and said, "I'll take you to ride." "No, no, no," Tang Ning waved her hands hurriedly and said, "I can do it alone." Men and women are not close to each other. Although Xiao Maniu's figure is not as exaggerated as Su Mei and Li Tianlan, she is still better than Tang Yao Yao. She has as much bulge as she should have. She clings tightly to Tang Ning's back like this. What else are you thinking about riding a horse? How long will it take for you to learn this way?" Wanyan Yan didn't care. She grabbed the reins from his hand and said, "Go further down." When she said this, her body pressed closer to her. Tang Ning always reminded him that he came to the grassland for the sake of national justice and world peace. He silently recited the pure heart mantra several times, but he could not withstand her constant blows. After being distracted for a while, Tang Ning jumped off the horse and said, "That's it for today. Prairie women don't have so many taboos, but he has to avoid it a little. If Tang Yao Yao knows that he is riding a horse with a little man-girl on the grassland, keeping company in the world of mortals, lingering together, Tang Ning will never want to be with her in the future. She slept together. When he led the horse back, Wang Yanyan looked at him and asked, "You said, if the eldest brother and the third brother also share food with them?" Tang Ning shook her head and said, "No." Seeing how determined he was, Wang Yanyan was surprised and asked, "Why?" Tang Ning said, "Because they are poor. 10 kilograms of grain may not sound like much, but it is enough for a family of 3 for 1 month. Plus their own grain, it is enough for these tribes to not have to scrimp on food and clothing during the winter. The eldest prince and the third prince themselves cannot take care of it. What will be done to support these tribes?" The eldest prince paced in the tent, frowning and asked, "The Nipangu tribe has completely defected to the fourth princess, where is Wuda?" The man named Butai said, "Wuda is no longer the leader of the Nipangu tribe. He was injured last time in the Wuyan tribe. Under the temptation of the fourth princess's food, the Nipangu tribe took him away." "The right." Butai looked at him and said, "Prince, our tribes have also made some unusual movements after hearing that the fourth princess distributed food. I don't have that much food to give them." The prince showed doubt on his face and asked, "Where did she get so much food?" Butai said, "It is said that the people of Wuyan tribe robbed the grain transport team of Chen State. Chen State has stationed troops north of Yinshan Mountain and will need to transport food frequently in the future." The prince thought for a while and said, "If she can rob, why can't we? She used 500 people to rob food, and we used 1,000 people. You lead 1,000 people and ambush on the way to Chen State to transport grain." Butai thought for a while and said, "Prince, they were robbed once, and now they must be more careful and will definitely send more troops." The prince frowned and said, "If 1,000 people are not enough, then 2,000 people. This is the grassland. Would the warriors on the grassland be afraid of a few two-legged sheep?" Butai cupped his hands and said, "Yes. The situation on the grassland changes so quickly that it is always unexpected." When Tang Ning came to the grassland, Wang Yanyan had only 14 tribes under her command, the third prince had 18 tribes, and the eldest prince had 22 tribes. He had been in the grassland for only about a month, and Wang Yanyan had already mastered 18 tribes. This mastery was not the nominal mastery before, but a thorough mastery. All the able-bodied men of the 18 tribes had become her personal guards, and the leaders of the 18 tribes also followed her lead. Because of the fight, the third prince was deducted 2 tribes by the Khan, leaving only 16 tribes. The eldest prince now has only 18 tribes, and has no advantage over Wang Yanyan. Like the third prince, he was deducted 2 tribes. The reason why he had 2 fewer tribes was that he sent 2 tribes to rob the grain transport troops of the Chen kingdom, but only 2 people ran back. The eldest prince was punished for this and is still unable to get out of bed. So far, the Wanyan tribe has 2 princes and 1 princess. The tribes under Wang Yanyan are equal to those of the eldest prince, but the cohesion of his subordinates is not as good as that of the eldest prince and the third prince combined, and he became the first Khan under Wanyan Khan. At this time, the first Khan, who had no dignity of a Khan, wore Han Chinese clothes and rouge. He came to a tent and looked at the figure sitting at the table and asked, "Did you find anything different about me today?" Tang Ning looked up at her and said, "I changed my clothes and put on rouge." Wang Yanyan asked again, "Does it look good?" Tang Ning retracted her gaze and said casually, "It's okay." Wang Yanyan frowned and asked, "What do you mean it's okay?" Tang Ning explained without raising her head, "It's okay, it's okay." Wang Yanyan glared at him, walked out angrily, returned to her tent, and sat in front of the bronze mirror angrily. Ayana leaned against the door and said, "No matter how beautiful you dress, he doesn't have you in his heart and can't see your beauty." Wang Yanyan looked back at her and asked, "Are all his wives beautiful?" Ayana thought for a while and said, except for the fourth wife, the others can only be compared with the princess in their own ways. Wanyanyan said, isn't his fourth wife beautiful? Ayana looked at her and said, if the princess was half as beautiful as her, she could walk sideways and he wouldn't even look at you. Fortunate young gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 709. Wanyanyan looked at Iina and said unconvincedly, the Han people have a saying, as long as you work hard, you can grind an iron rod into a needle. Even if he is an iron rod, I can grind it into a needle. Iina looked at her, thought for a while, and said, this sentence is wrong. Wanyanyan said, how can others say something that has been said for hundreds or thousands of years be wrong? Iina looked at her and asked, how does the princess want to grind the eye of the needle? Wanyanyan thought about it, looked at Iina again, pointed to the door, and said, you get out. Tang Ning was alone in the tent and closed the door to prevent Wanyanyan from finding an excuse to come over again. As long as you work hard, you can grind an iron rod into a needle. The ancient saying is still very reasonable. There are enough wives in the family. Even for his own safety, he must keep himself clean. Except for work, it is best not to have any communication with other opposite sexes. And now Wanyanyan's men are unlikely to make any big mistakes. At this time, 10 caddies of grain was equivalent to 16 caddies in later generations. In other words, every family that joined Wanyanyan's personal army could guarantee at least half a caddy of rice every day. The strong men of each tribe were here, and this half a caddy of rice was enough to make their wives and children live a comfortable life. They had food and shelter, and they didn't have to worry about their family's food and clothing. As long as Wanyanyan could always provide them with food, these people would definitely be loyal to her and never have second thoughts. This move not only united the hearts of Wanyanyan's own subordinates, but also many discordant voices in the tribes under the eldest prince and the third prince. It's not the lack of food that is worrying, but the inequality. Everyone surrendered to the Wanyan tribe. Why should other people's Khan distribute food, and their Khan wants food? Obviously, it is much better to follow the fourth princess than the eldest prince and the third prince. The eldest prince and the third prince no longer dare to collect food from their tribes. After hearing the news that the fourth princess distributed food, their tribes were already demoralized. If they put pressure on them, it is very likely to cause riots. Tang Ning hoped that the eldest prince and the third prince would do so. The Wanyan tribe was now facing a great enemy. If they caused civil strife again, Wanyanyan would be able to win easily. At that time, Tang Ning returned to Beijing in advance to report. Unfortunately, the eldest prince and the third prince were not stupid. They had been honest these days. Although there were still many dissatisfied voices in their tribes, nothing serious happened. There were still many prisoners of war from the Chen kingdom in the hands of the Wanyan tribe. Wanyanyan had saved them against all odds. This time she wrote to the Khan, wanting to use the prisoners of war from the Chen kingdom to exchange the grassland prisoners, and she had already received consent. It was she who saved them at the beginning, and it was also she who asked for the exchange of prisoners now. These people who were exchanged should also belong to her. The eldest prince made a big fuss about this, but there was no result. Instead, he was scolded by the Khan again. He has been much more honest these days. Judging from the style of Wanyan Khan, he treated the eldest prince, the third prince, and Wanyanyan equally, with clear rewards and punishments, regardless of closeness, but only merits and demerits. No wonder the tribes he conquered were very convinced of him. He must have some courage to unify the Sushan tribe and complete this unprecedented feat. Judging from his recent decisive actions, he should have decided to determine the inheritance of the next Khan before the threat of the black barbarians comes again, and this candidate must be from the eldest prince, the third prince, and Wanyanyan. In the eldest prince's tent. Why, the eldest prince paced in the tent, his expression furious, and said sternly, Those are all my people, why should I give them to her? Prince, calm down. Butai stepped forward and persuaded, the Khan did not investigate the matter of our loss of 2 tribes, we are lucky. Lucky, the eldest prince said angrily, in just 1 month, her power has surpassed this king. Is this lucky for this king? Butai looked at him and said, don't forget, eldest prince, no matter how powerful the 4th princess is, she is still a woman. As long as she gets married, these tribes will not be taken back by the Khan. Bullshit, the eldest prince looked at him and said angrily, if she doesn't want to get married, can this king force her to marry? Why not? Butai looked at him and said, the eldest prince is the eldest brother of the 4th princess. The Khan is ill in the tent. Isn't it right for the eldest prince to care about her marriage? The eldest prince was a little moved at first, and then said irritably, she won't listen to me. Butai said, the 4th princess won't listen to the eldest prince, but she will always listen to the Khan, right? The eldest prince was stunned, looked at him, and asked, what do you mean? Butai stepped forward and said, the 3rd prince must not want to see the 4th princess's power continue to grow. We can unite with the 3rd prince first. After listening to this, the eldest prince's eyes flashed a few times and said, just do as you say. The 3rd prince was in the tent. The 3rd prince has not been very smooth in recent months. After several twists and turns, his power has been slightly inferior to that of the 4th princess and the eldest prince. If this continues, his voice in the clan will become smaller and smaller, until he completely loses the possibility of becoming Khan. At this moment, he held a letter in his hand and sneered, has Wanyan Chu finally lost his temper? A man beside him stepped forward and whispered, 3rd prince, the eldest prince's proposal is worth considering. The 4th princess's momentum of rising is too strong. Only by thoroughly muddying the waters can we have a chance. She really framed me last time. Thinking of the losses she had suffered these days, Wanyan Yan had gained a lot. The 3rd prince crumpled the letter and said, she was ruthless first, so don't blame me for being ungrateful. Win tribe. Wanyan Yan, who had just learned some news, was angry. She slammed the table and stood up, saying angrily, who wants to get married? Yesterday, young warriors from more than 10 tribes under the command of the eldest prince and the 3rd prince found the Khan at the same time and asked to marry the 4th princess. The Khan could not ignore the requests of more than 10 tribes, and the 4th princess Wanyan Yan had already reached the age of marriage, so the Khan had no suitable reason to refuse. However, there was only one princess, but there were more than a dozen people who wanted to marry the princess. No matter how many tribes proposed marriage, only one could be chosen in the end. In order to convince the crowd, the Khan proposed a way, that is, to let the warriors of each tribe compete with each other. The most powerful warrior who won in the end could marry the princess. It was this incident that made Wanyan Yan angry. Ayana stepped forward and said, it is obvious that the eldest prince and the 3rd prince planned this in advance. The Khan can't bear the pressure from more than a dozen tribes. Wanyan Yan waved her sleeves and said, I don't care. I won't marry anyone anyway. Tang Ning walked in from outside and saw Wanyan Yan's angry expression. He was surprised and said, what's wrong? Why are you so angry? Ayana glanced at him and explained the matter. What? Tang Ning's expression froze when he heard it. If the little girl got married, her tribe would definitely not be able to be saved. If her tribe could not be saved, she would not be able to become Khan. If she did not become Khan, the peace between Chen state and the grassland would become empty talk. If he could not promote the peace between Chen and Chu, wouldn't his trip to the grassland be in vain? This is outrageous, Tang Ning frowned, slammed the table, and said angrily, I see who dares to marry you. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fortunate young gentleman. Author, Wrong Xiao Wrong. Chapter 710. Tang Ning returned to his tent. Wang Yanyan looked at Ayana and said proudly, "You see, he still cares about me. He won't let anyone else marry me. He just wants the peace of Chenchu and doesn't want the scheme of the eldest prince and the third prince to succeed." Ayana glanced at her and said, "Princess, just lie to yourself." After she finished speaking, she left the tent. Wang Yanyan sat on the bed with a trace of sadness on her face, but soon she cheered up and got up and walked outside. Tang Ning sat in the tent with a frown. Wang Yankan suddenly wanted to choose a son-in-law for Wang Yanyan. This happened suddenly and he was not prepared at all. He used food to help Wang Yanyan gather people's hearts, and by the way, the subordinates of the eldest prince and the third prince complained and the people were unstable. It was not easy to establish Wang Yanyan's position as the first Khan, but who would have thought that the eldest prince and the third prince would join forces to cut off the firewood? If they were not handled well, their previous efforts would be wasted, and even made wedding clothes for others. The person who came up with this idea was so sinister, he was really not a good person. Wang Yankan's decision could not be changed. The only solution was to win the competition and not let the people of the first and third princes take advantage. Wang Yanyan pushed the door open. Tang Ning looked at her and asked, "Do you have any powerful warriors who can beat the people of the first and third princes in the competition?" Yes, Wang Yanyan nodded and said, "Ayana might be able to do it." Ayana was a woman, no matter how powerful she was, it would be useless. Tang Ning looked at her and continued to ask, "Besides Ayana, no one else?" Tang Ning thought about it, looked at her and asked, "Can women get married in your grassland?" Wang Yanyan did not answer, but her eyes told Tang Ning that they could not. This was a big problem. Even Ayana was only a possibility. Apart from Ayana, no one under her command could suppress the people of the first and third princes. If she wanted to stop this competition, she had to do it herself. He couldn't beat Ayana either, and besides, he didn't have a suitable identity to participate in the competition. When Tang Ning was thinking, Wang Yanyan looked at him and asked, "I ask you, why don't you want them to marry me?" Tang Ning said unhappily, "Nonsense, no matter who marries you, your tribe will be handed over to the eldest prince and the third prince, so you can't be the Khan. If you can't be the Khan, how can there be peace between Chen and the grassland?" Wang Yanyan asked with some disappointment, "Just because of this?" Tang Ning looked at her and said in surprise, "What else?" Wang Yanyan glanced at him and gritted her teeth and said, "You are really for the mission given to you by the Emperor of Chen?" Tang Ning shook his head and said, "No." Wang Yanyan said angrily, "That's it?" Tang Ning pointed to the sky and said, "I swear to God, no." As a person who has died once, Tang Ning is still very cautious about oaths. The mission given to him by Emperor Chen is indeed not this. Emperor Chen wants him to seduce Wang Yanyan, and then indirectly control the grassland. It would be best if he has another son and let the Wanyan tribe have the surname Tang directly. If Tang Ning strictly follows the task given to him by Emperor Chen, she would be the fifth wife of the Tang family now. Of course, Tang Ning is principled in his work. He has more dignity than Emperor Chen. Wang Yanyan said happily, "Really?" Tang Ning nodded solemnly, "Absolutely true. The little wild horse is actually very easy to coax." After a while, she turned from anger to joy and even forgot about the marriage proposal. She is like a child who never grows up. Tang Ning still plans to find a reliable person to discuss this matter. He walked out of the tent, looked at a figure not far away, and asked from a distance, "How powerful are the bravest warriors under the eldest prince and the third prince?" Ayana, who was practicing sword, put away the sword and said, "Butai under the eldest prince is very strong, and Hanal under the third prince is not an ordinary person. They will definitely send these two people to the field this time. I am not sure of winning against them. Even Ayana is not sure of winning, so there is no hope for Wang Yanyan's men." Tang Ning looked at her and asked, "Is there any way to let me play?" Ana looked at him and said disdainfully, "Do you know what the competition is this time?" Tang Ning looked at her and asked, "What competition?" "Warriors on the grassland naturally have to compete in horseback archery." "Who can you beat in horseback riding and archery?" Ana said. "In addition to horseback archery, there is also a martial arts competition." "You can't even beat me, and you still want to beat Butai and Hanel." Tang Ning smiled and said, "How about a competition?" Although Ana had never fought with Tang Ning, he could only fight on par with Wang Yanyan on weekdays, and the two of them combined were no match for him. She looked at Tang Ning and said, "You are no match for me." Tang Ning looked at her and asked, "How do you know if you don't try?" Wang Yanyan soon learned that Tang Ning was going to compete with Ana, ran out of the tent, looked at Tang Ning happily, and asked, "Do you want to marry me?" "This is just a temporary solution." Tang Ning sighed and said helplessly, "You have no one to use, so I can only do it myself." Wang Yanyan said, "But if you can't even beat me, you definitely can't beat Ana." Tang Ning said, "We'll know if we can win after the fight." Tang Ning looked at Ana, pointed to the grassland not far away, and said, "Please." Ana glanced at him and walked over slowly. Wang Yanyan hurriedly followed and said, "You should be more lenient with him." Ana nodded to her and said, "Don't worry, I will be careful." On the grassland, Tang Ning and Ana stood still, bowed to her and said, "Sorry for the offense." Ana clasped her fists to him and said, "I will show mercy." "No need." Tang Ning looked at her and said, "Show your full strength." Ana glanced at him and said, "Then be careful." Tang Ning smiled and turned to walk out of the grassland. Wang Yanyan looked at him and asked in confusion, "Aren't you going to compete anymore?" Tang Ning waved his hand and said, "It's over." "Ah," Wang Yanyan looked at him and said in surprise, "But you haven't competed yet." She walked to Ayana and asked in confusion, "What's going on?" "I don't know." Ayana shook her head and said, "He gave up." As soon as she finished speaking and took a step forward, she felt her legs go weak and she couldn't support her body and fell to the ground. Wang Yanyan hurriedly supported her and asked in surprise, "What happened to you?" "My legs." Ayana looked at her legs in horror and said in a trembling voice, "My legs have no feeling." Tang Ning did not turn his head back, raised his hand and threw a porcelain bottle from behind, saying, "This is the antidote, take one orally." Wang Yanyan took the porcelain bottle, looked at Ayana, and said in surprise, "What did he do to you?" Ayana poured an antidote from the porcelain bottle, took it, and helped Wang Yanyan stand up after a long time, shook his head, and said in shock, "I don't know." In a fair and above-board martial arts competition, 3 Tang Nings are not Ayana's opponents, but if you only look at the results and not the process, 10 Ayanas will also fall into his hands. Since realizing that with his talent, it is impossible to make much progress in the martial arts, Tang Ning has dispersed part of his energy to these strange skills and spent more time studying poison. With the old beggar's teachings and Su Mei's personal guidance, plus the Wangu sect's teaching treasure, although his martial arts did not improve much, his Gu technique improved by leaps and bounds. In Tang Ning's tent, Wang Yanyan sat at the table, holding her chin with both hands, looking at him curiously, and asked, "How did you make Ai's legs weak just now? Can you teach me?" Tang Ning said, "This is a secret that cannot be passed on. I can't teach others casually." Wang Yanyan didn't care about it at all. She sat on the bed and said eagerly, "Then try it on me and see if you can make my legs weak too." Fortunate Young Gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 711. Chapter 706 of the main text of Ruyi Little Man, Confrontation. Tang Ning was not surprised that Wang Yanyan was so interested in Gu magic. When he first came into contact with this thing, he was surprised for a long time. After slowly getting used to it, he was not surprised anymore. Weird. It's okay to be curious, but being curious about anything can also bring unnecessary trouble. Wang Yanyan insisted on trying the goo, but after taking the antidote, she still had to be supported by Tang Ning when walking. Even though Tang Ning told her in advance that even if she took the antidote for this poison, her legs would be weak for half a day to a day, she still did not hesitate. Tang Ning helped her walk outside the tent. Although Wang Yanyan's legs were still weak, her face was full of energy. She looked at Tang Ning and said expectantly, "It's amazing. How did you do it? Please teach me." Before she learned the voodoo technique, she was already jumping up and down, making Tang Ning uneasy. But after she learned the voodoo technique, she was fine. Tang Ning waved her hand and said perfunctorily, "Let's talk about it later." He supported Wang Yanyan towards the door, and a figure walked in from outside. Big. Chen Zhou watched Tang Ning helping Wang Yanyan move step by step outside the tent. The next moment, he turned around and said, "My lord, please be busy first." Chen Zhou came here to contact the grassland and stayed in Win. When he came, he also brought some supplies, including fresh vegetables wrapped in ice, tea, fine wine, etc. In the prairie, these things were rare, and Tang Ning had not eaten fresh vegetables for several days. Chen Zhou even brought 2 cooks from Fengzhou. After many days, Tang Ning finally tasted the long-lost taste. This young man, Chen Zhou, is so suitable to be a personal guard. Even a small general is not worthy of him. This time he brought not only a cook, but also an imperial doctor. His meticulous thinking is unmatched by anyone. After Xiaoju returns, he should be promoted from Zhonglang General to General. Who else can take the position of Zhonglang General than Chen Zhou? Wei Nianyan used the best food for him these days. Tang Ning covered her with silk and ate fresh vegetables, and she spread her own sheepskin to eat mutton. He saw it all. Tang Ning was not a solitary eater, and he knew how to be grateful. He looked at the sumptuous meal on the table and said, "Go and call the princess." Yes, Chen Zhou responded, then brought another bowl of soup and said, "Sir, this is the soup my subordinates specially asked them to stew for you. You can drink it while it's hot." Tang Ning took a sip and found it tasted good. She picked up the bowl, finished the soup and asked, "What kind of soup is this? It tastes pretty good. Do you have any more?" "This is tiger whip soup. I happened to bring a high-quality tiger whip this time." Chen Zhou took the bowl and said, "There is still a lot in the pot. I will serve it to you." Tang Ning burped and asked in disbelief, "What soup?" Wang Yanyan sat opposite Tang Ning, looking at the table full of fresh vegetables, and asked in surprise, "Where do these come from?" Chen Zhou brought it from outside. Tang Ning looked at her and said, "Eat it while it's hot, don't wait for it to cool down." Wang Yanyan also liked eating Han food very much. She just picked up the chopsticks, looked at Tang Ning and asked, "Why don't you eat it?" Tang Ning waved her hand and said, "You can eat, I have no appetite." Wei Nianyan looked at him, picked up the chopsticks, divided each dish into 2 portions, ate a small portion for herself, and then said, "Then when you have an appetite, heat it up before eating." Wang Yanyan finished her meal, stood up, looked at him, and said, "Let's go, I'll take you to meet someone." Tang Ning raised her head and asked, "Who is it?" "My master," Wang Yanyan said, "only when you meet her can you participate in this competition." Tang Ning said, "Please return your account first. I will go out to find you later." Wang Yanyan asked in confusion, "Why not now? Do you have anything else to do?" Tang Ning said, "I want to rest for a while." "Why don't you take a break? If you're late, you won't be able to participate." Wang Yanyan walked over and pulled him up. Tang Ning hunched over and said hurriedly, "You go out first. I have a stomachache. I'll look for you later." Naturally, it wasn't because of his stomach discomfort, but because of Chen Zhou's bowl of soup. After drinking the soup that night, there was an uncontrollable evil fire in his body that could not be vented, so he would show certain physical signs. It had been 2 months since she left home. During these 2 months, Tang Ning had kept herself clean and had been in a state of abstinence. Because of this, she was even more unable to control certain things that were already uncontrollable. "Did you have a bad stomach?" Wang Yanyan looked at him and said worriedly, "I'll go find the doctor." After watching Wang Yanyan run out, Tang Ning breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he had a quick wit, otherwise he would have been disgraced on the prairie today. Wang Yanyan ran out of the big tent, her steps slowly stopped, she didn't know what she thought of, and a hint of blush appeared on her face. Tang Ning waited in the tent for a while, then Chen Zhou led someone in and said, "Sir, I heard that you are not feeling well, so I brought the imperial doctor over." "My health is very good." Tang Ning glared at him and said, "Don't waste the remaining soup, drink it all yourself." Chen Zhou looked troubled and said, "Sir, this soup is too powerful. I only drink it at home on weekdays. If I drink it on the grassland, my body will not be able to bear it." He knew that he could only drink this when his wife was at home, so why didn't he consider Tang Ning's feelings? "Do it yourself and have enough food and clothing." Tang Ning glanced at him and said, "This is a military order." The person Wang Yanyan wanted to take Tang Ning to see was her and Ana's master. As a Han Chinese, Tang Ning needed his help to participate in this competition. Along the way, after Wang Yanyan's explanation, Tang Ning learned that Ana was actually a Han Chinese. She was just picked up by their master when she was a child and brought to the grassland. Later, she lived as a grassland person. This is why no one noticed when she went to Chen State to participate in the martial arts examination. There is still a difference between the appearance of grassland women and Han women, but Ana, who is originally a Han Chinese, does not have this flaw. Wang Yanyan and Ana's master was once the first warrior of Sushan and had a very high status in the tribe. However, he devoted himself to martial arts training many years ago and did not ask about the affairs of the tribe. But even so, he still had a lot of say in the Sushan tribes, and even Wang Yankan would give him some face. The group rode for more than 10 miles. Wang Yanyan pointed to a lonely tent in front and said, "It's right in front." Tang Ning turned over and dismounted, and walked slowly over. After walking a few steps, he stopped and looked down at the grass under his feet. The grass under his feet was not as flat as other places, but was covered with scratches of varying depths. On the cliff on one side of the tent, there were many crisscrossing and dense gullies, as if they were cut by swords. Old Zheng stood under the cliff, stopped and stared, his expression was slightly stern. A figure lifted the curtain of the tent and walked out. Wang Yanyan looked at the middle-aged woman, ran over quickly, and said happily, "Master." Tang Ning was a little surprised. He didn't expect that Wang Yanyan's master was actually a woman. The first warrior of the grassland was also a woman. The middle-aged woman looked at Wang Yanyan, and the next moment, her eyes looked at old Zheng under the cliff, and her figure disappeared at the same time. Clang! The scimitar and the butcher knife collided and sparks flew. Old Zheng and the middle-aged woman each took 2 steps back. The woman held 2 scimitars and chopped again. Old Zheng blocked with his sword. Sparks flew everywhere. The sound of metal clashing hurt people's eardrums, but the 2 of them didn't notice it at all. After blocking 2 knives, old Zheng seemed to have turned from defense to offense and chopped straight forward. The 2 of them just chopped and chopped in an ordinary way. There were no fancy movements or complicated moves. You chopped and I chopped. If Tang Ning didn't know old Zheng's strength, he would have thought they were performing. No matter which middle-aged woman or old Zheng, this seemingly ordinary knife, even masters of the level of Baijin and Gong Sun Ying could not take it. Tang Ning took out a handful of melon seeds that Chen Zhou brought this time from his arms and gave half to Wang Yanyan. After eating 2, he saw that they were still chopping each other, and asked Wang Yanyan casually, "Who do you think will win?"